It's winter 1989. Daytona Beach, Florida is a safe, quiet city where most homicides come from the drug trade, the cocaine cowboys. On December 13th, investigators find the body of Richard Mallory, a store owner.
When Richard Mallory's body was found, he was covered with a bit of carpet and palm fronds. His belt was done up, his trousers were done up, his trouser pockets had been turned inside out.
He had been robbed and shot to death with a .22 caliber pistol.
The first bullet entered from the right side of his body, and it went on through his lung. The second bullet went through this part of his body as well.
Everybody thought this was just another drug-related homicide.
We didn't have a clue as to how big this really was or how important it was to so many people.
There was no evidence that linked anyone to that death. The bulk of what we know about the Mallory homicide and how it occurred is actually through Aileen Wuornos.
With Aileen Wuornos, I always looked at it as a stack of dominoes, if you will, falling throughout her life, from being a young child to an adolescent to a hitchhiking prostitute to everything that came before her execution. Aileen Wuornos was born in Michigan in 1956. She was the daughter of a woman called Diane, who had two children, Aileen and Keith, and she abandoned them twice in their first 2 years of life. My name is Sue Russell, author of a book about Aileen Wuornos' life of crime. Eileen's father was a convicted sex offender and rapist. So when Diane abandoned the two babies, they were raised by her grandparents with Diane's siblings, Laurie and Barry. It was a very dysfunctional family. Her grandfather, he was an alcoholic. He was very hard on Aileen and Keith, and he would whip them with a leather belt. The neighborhood kids, they would hear the screaming from across the yard.
She was my friend when we were teenagers, and she's not all malicious, you know, like people say. I'm Dawn Botkins, Aileen Wuornos' best friend. She loved Coney Islands and loved to go see movies and things like that. She was very beautiful. She had perfectly blonde hair, and she always had her tan, took care of herself, and loved her white teeth. Always was a nut about brushing her teeth constantly. And when she smiled, she had the most beautiful smile. Couldn't help it. It's just when she drank, all of a sudden that smile would turn into something you wouldn't want to know at the moment.
Eileen's childhood was so troubled that by the age of 11, she had her first sexual experience. And she was willing to prostitute herself for a packet of cigarettes. And she was known in the neighborhood for this activity. She was incredibly starved for love and attention and friendship. And the way she went about getting it, of course, was the complete opposite of something that was going to bring friendship and love into her life.
At age 13, Wuornos is rumored to have been raped and becomes pregnant.
It was a guy that lived in the neighborhood, and he raped her, and she got pregnant. They put her in an unweds home, and nobody believed her would have anything to do with her. None of her friends, they all turned against her. It was awful.
Eileen's son was swept away for adoption. The parents were furious with her. She began running away, camping in the woods, and living rough, prostituting herself for money.
I don't know when she went out with her customers. She had so many of them that beat on her and stuff like that. But you could tell by looking at her face if she had a black eye or something.
She would steal from stores, run out with unpaid bills, and she basically started to become known to the local law enforcement. She was sent to juvenile hall a couple of times, I believe.
That's the only way she could eat. She wasn't allowed back in the home.
At the age of 20, Wuornos leaves Michigan for good and hitchhikes to Florida.
Eileen's life did not improve when she got to Florida. She got arrested for forging checks and armed robbery. She actually got married to a 69-year-old yacht club president. It only lasted 9 weeks before he got it annulled. He claimed that Aileen beat him with his own cane. She had no friends, no real relationships. Her life was empty until one fateful day in July of 1986.
Aileen Wuornos met the first true love of her life, Tyra Moore, in a bar in Florida. And the attraction was immediate, and thus began a very intense relationship. They were together 4.5 years all told.
When they met, Tyra Moore was a 24-year-old hotel maid. Ty became Eileen's whole world. Aileen had been treated terribly her whole life, and now she had a chance to be happy.
It was an incredibly meaningful relationship to her. She depended heavily on Ty.
Aileen didn't want Tyra to lift a finger, so while Tyra stayed home, Aileen earned money with sex work.
Aileen was desperate not to be left by Ty. Her fear of abandonment was so profound. Her only way of dealing with it was to try to have money.
Aileen, you just had to hook and hook and hook, and she had been raped so many times. And she just decided to fight back.
What happened that night with her client, Richard Mallory, and with the other murders depends on who you believe.
She's attacked by Mallory. Trauma gets activated, and so when you look at those other crimes, it is entirely reasonable that she could be perceiving a self-defense.
I think Aileen was driven by her mistaken belief that having money would stop Ty from leaving her. I truly believe that was the driving force behind all these murders.